Hello class, what we want to talk about now, this is lesson 5. We want to talk about Islam and the Christian West. And I want to call your attention to the timeline in the notes. I'm not going to go through every event in the timeline. I'm just going to hit some of the main ones real quickly. Muhammad was born in 570 in Mecca. He received his first vision, presumably from Gabriel, and became a prophet in 610. In 622, he fled to Medina, and this is the beginning of the Muslim period. And about this time also, according to some sources, he issued his first warning to the Byzantine Empire to convert or prepare for war. He died in 632 in Medina. We have a series of caliphs that come up next. Important dates to remember: 636 is when Jerusalem was captured. Sophronius was patriarch. If you want to research primary sources, you can look at Sophronius' writings about the fall of Jerusalem. And then in 640, Alexandria in Egypt was taken, and Cyrus, the monothelite patriarch, was there when that happened. He died in 641, and then posthumously was declared a heretic in 680. In 711, Theric crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, invading into Europe, and in 632, Charles Martel, Charles the Hammer, defeated the Muslims at Poitiers and Tours, and Europe was spared of Muslim conquest. The golden era of Islam is from 786 to 809, and the First Crusade was launched in 1096. Jerusalem was captured by Godfrey of Bouillon. In 1187, Saladin, the Sultan of Egypt, and the scourge of the Crusaders conquered Tiberias and retook Jerusalem. He defeated King Richard I before he died in 1193. This marks the decline of the Crusades. In 1288 to 1326, the Ottoman dynasty was founded. And in 1453, Muhammad II captured Constantinople, the capital and the last remaining city of the Byzantine Empire, and renamed it Istanbul. Greek scholars were forced to flee west, bringing with them Greek literature, the Greek New Testament, and paving the way for an intellectual revival in Europe. And in 1492, Ferdinand defeated Bobadil at Granada, ending Muslim rule in Spain. And in 1517, Sultan Selim I of Turkey conquered Egypt. So how did Islam spread? Well, it spread primarily by the sword. Philip Schaff, in his church history, writes, Mohammedanism conquered the fairest portions of the earth by the sword and cursed them with polygamy, slavery, despotism, and desolation. The moving power of Islam was fanaticism and brute force. Islam, in its conquering march, took forcible possession of the lands of the Bible and the Greek church, seized the throne of Constantinople, overran Spain, crossed the Pyrenees, and for a long time threatened even the Church of Rome and the German Empire until it was finally repulsed beneath the wall of Vienna. If you want a different perspective on the spread of Islam, it can be found at Oxford Islamic Studies website, and the web link is in the class notes. You can click on that, and there's a nice article there. What are some of the benefits that might come from the rise of Islam? Well, in the West, preparing for engaging Islam led to the development of the codes of chivalry that influenced the behavior of knights and princely courts. Islamic architecture influenced Christian architecture and the way churches were built. Interaction with Muslims in Spain and other places promoted studies in mathematics, chemistry, and medicine. Muslims brought Aristotle to Europe by way of Spain and laid the foundations for the rise of medieval scholasticism. Muslim invasions drove Greek scholars west into Europe and so prepared the way for the Protestant Reformation with the introduction of Greek text of the Church Fathers and especially of the New Testament. What are some points of contact between Christianity and Islam? Well, especially between Protestant Christianity, there's an abhorrence of idolatry and image worship. There is a call in Christianity to a life of simplicity and temperance, which also exists in the Islamic faith. What was Muhammad's philosophy of proselytizing? Muhammad said, "The sword is the key of heaven and hell. A drop of blood shed in the cause of Allah, a night spent in arms, is of more avail than 2 months of fasting and prayer. Whoever falls in battle, his sins are forgiven, and at the day of judgment his limbs shall be supplied by the wings of angels and cherubim." So that's a brief look at the spread of Islam. How did it challenge life in the West? Well, we need to think about the environment from which Islam sprung. What was religion like in Arabia at the time of Muhammad? Well, the dominant worship was paganism. A form of star worshippers constituted the ruling class of Arab Bedouins in the area where Muhammad grew up. There's also a strong Jewish presence, which brought culture and rabbinical tradition to the area around Medina. There were also heretical Christian groups that had been expelled from the Roman and Byzantine empires. These often headed east to Arabia. These groups included Arians, Modalists, Ebionites, Nestorians, Eutychians, Monophysites, Marianites, and others. And the cult of Mary, and possibly even Gnostic groups. And Schaff has argued that perhaps Islam started as an attempt to unite the three monotheistic faiths into one unified belief system. So what was the life of Muhammad like? Well, he was self-taught, born in Mecca around 570. He worked as an attendant watching sheep and cattle for traveling caravans, and this was a despised job among Arabs. So he was certainly not upper class. He was independent and self-supporting his whole life. He probably couldn't read. The Quran was probably copied at dictation. He married a rich widow at age 25. Only one child by her survived to adulthood. After her death, he married numerous wives. He suffered from epileptic seizures. These were variously attributed to either demons or God. He reported to have had visitations by the angel Gabriel at the age of 40. He combined elements of three religions to create Islam. At 52, he was recognized as a prophet and lawgiver at Medina. His early preaching included toleration. He said, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." Later, though, he embraced forced conversion, including the sword. In 624, he oversaw the execution of 600 Jewish men and then sold their wives and children into slavery, all in one day. He died on June 8, 632, of a violent fever. His last words were, "O Lord, destroy the Jews and the Christians. Let there not remain any faith but that of Islam throughout the whole of Arabia." So what was his character like? Muhammad began as a sincere and a modest man. He finished as a tyrannical despot. He had no appetite for worldly shows of power and pomp, living a simple life to the very end. He had, however, a great appetite for sensual pleasures. One of his wives said this: "The prophet loved three things: women, perfumes, and food. He had his heart's desire of the first two, but not of the last." What are Islamic doctrines relative to Christianity? Well, first of all, with regard to God, Islam is devoutly monotheistic, just as Christianity is. With regard to Christ, Jesus is regarded in the Quran as the blessed Son of Mary and called the Messiah. He is viewed as a servant and apostle of the true God, but he is not the Son of God, for God has no wife and therefore can have no son. Some Muslim scholars have considered both Jesus and Mary to be free of all sin. The Quran teaches the virgin birth of Jesus. The portrayal of Jesus often follows the Gnostic Gospels. Jesus' death on the cross is denied. The Quran teaches that he was miraculously delivered and he and Mary ascended into heaven. Jesus' promise of the Paraclete is transferred to Muhammad. Some, including Schaff, have considered Islam to be an extreme heretical form of Christianity rather than a new religion. What are points of divergence? Well, the Trinity, for one thing. Islam expressly denies the Trinity. So the vision of God in Islam is not the vision of God in Christianity. Therefore, the God of Islam is not the God of Christianity. The incarnation. Islam expressly denies the incarnation. And so again, the view of who God is and how he has revealed himself is radically different. So the God of Islam cannot be the God of Christianity. The gospel. Christianity is a faith built on the concept of a gracious God who intervenes on behalf of sinners. Islam is a religion of works where the faithful must prove themselves worthy. The afterlife. Christianity believes that paradise is a place of peace, rest, and worship of God in his glory. Islam portrays paradise as a place of sensual pleasure. And so we see the similarities, we see the differences, and we see the man Muhammad, and that gives us some sense of the religion that he bequeathed to the world and its impact on the West.